If you think what a commandment is, it's somebody, as it were, urging you into some kind of behavior. If they have authority over you, then you can call it a command. But if they only have moral authority over you, meaning not actual coercive authority, then it's an urging. And clearly, if people thought that God had coercive authority over us, the world would look very different. The only authority God has, as it were, is a moral authority, so an urging. So here's my creative translation, therefore, of this phrase. May the will of my ego self dissolve, and may my will arise to the will of my higher self in the tradition of my ancestors. And may this higher will, which is in communion with the divine, habituate me into God's teaching, and may it help me cleave to holy urgings. Okay. That's significantly different from the translation you have in your prayer books there. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is when I say to people how much I derive from prayer, part of it is because I know Hebrew, and I also understand the words conceptually. By the way, knowing Hebrew is not that much of an advantage as much as you would think. Well, how do I know this? Because most Israelis hate the prayer book. Okay, so knowing Hebrew does not make it any better. What you have to have is a poetic sensibility. Once you have a poetic sensibility and you say to yourself, well, here it says, may you be your will. It sounds the same in Hebrew. Yehi ratzon lefanecha, may it be your will. Anybody with a poetic sensibility can say to him or herself, what does it mean, your will? It doesn't mean that I have access to the divine will. I don't claim to have that, but I have an access to, I think, holy consciousness. I think I know what that feels like. And I think I know that higher consciousness is connected with the divine will. So what I'm really talking about here is moving into higher consciousness. So in this prayer here, when I have more time, I'm more or less doing this on my own. And this is, again, I think I shared with you, there are several lines in the prayer book which are my go-to lines. Like when I daven, I can't find my center. The one in the middle of the page that I talked about 2 weeks ago, may we always acknowledge the truth and be truthful in our inner thoughts. That's one of them. Another one is the one I just read you, about merging consciousness into the higher will. May I habituate myself into God's teaching, and may I cleave into holy urgings. I want to show you one other passage about the problem of will and how we understand this connection with the divine. Does anybody have any questions so far about the skill? I'm sharing with you a concept, how to understand divine will as a function of higher consciousness that is connected to the divine, and my regular practice of taking words of the prayer book, understanding them conceptually, and then finding a word in English or in Hebrew that names the concept better. But this is a skill that I teach my students, my rabbinical students, because my rabbinical students, by the way, very committed men and women, have the exact same theological problems as all of you. And I teach them a regular skill. We'll be studying a prayer, and I say, now translate it for me. And I don't mean Hebrew to English. When I say translate it, I mean translate the concepts, translate your will. And I say, you can use mine or something else, but make it meaningful. And I drill my students to do this on the fly. When they look at a piece of liturgy, translate it so it's meaningful to you. And that would be a good habit for all of us here if you want to have a deeper experience of prayer. When you see your will, what does that mean to you? When it says, Targilenu b'Toratecha, what does it mean to habituate yourselves in the Torah? Ask yourself conceptually, what exactly does this mean? This is, by the way, a Hasidic practice where it's called davening the heart of the prayer. I've mentioned this a few times. Davening the heart of the prayer is where you see the surface of the prayer and you force yourself to say, what does this mean to me? Some holy person 1,500, 2,000 years ago wrote this down, and it was so meaningful to them that they composed it and they presented it out. And other people, for generation after generation, has found this meaningful. They didn't just glide their eyes over the top of it. They plumbed into the heart of it. So there's a heart here. But you can only find it if you say to yourself, wait a minute, I'm not just going to scoot over the surface of this. I'm going to find my way into the depth of this. And the only way you do that is to stop and ask questions. What does this mean? How does this touching me? And if it's not touching me, can I open it up? Can I open my heart up to it? So it's hard work. Now, once you do that work, once you say to yourself, what does divine will mean to me really? What does habituate myself into your Torah, what does it mean to me really? Once you force yourself to ask that, I have to say with you, and you break into the concept, you have it for the rest of your life.